Hi, and welcome to Rapid Fire Wednesday, Q&A for corporate immigration professionals. I'm Kimberley Robidoux, partner in our San Diego office, and I'm here today, as always, with our co-managing partner of the Boston office, Miki Matrician. How are you doing, Miki?
Hi, Kim. I'm going to call you my fire twin going forward.
I love it. All right. So for today's installment of our Rapid Fire Wednesday, we are discussing some audience questions that we received during an event in which we participated recently. So just a couple of weeks ago, Nikki and our other partner, Dan, and I were able to speak to global mobility professionals at Global Mobility Journeys, which was hosted by Andy Smales in the UK. And in that session, we fielded some very astute and interesting questions from our audience. And we love those kinds of questions that make us think. And Andy also got us thinking, right? At the beginning of the session, Andy asked us to answer the question of why does immigration benchmarking matter to you? And for the three of us, we thought, wow, that's a really good question. And it does have a direct impact on what we do. I mean, we do this every day, all day, on weekends too, right? And with friends and family, we're always thinking about immigration. Immigration is a challenging field in terms of the pressure imposed on global mobility professionals. And it's not just in terms of workload, but it's also anxiety to the stakeholders. And the stakeholders aren't just foreign national employees that are being transferred or who are going through the immigration process, but those stakeholders are other individuals within the organization, right? Your executives, the hiring managers, and recruiters as well. And then any other leadership within the organization that may be involved with, employee relations or business operations. So global mobility professionals are the glue that kind of hold these stakeholders together and really work with these stakeholders to help them understand what the process is and what the programs are. And so benchmarking allows these professionals to ensure that their programs are achieving their larger intended goals, and also for them to see what's going out there, on out there in other organizations. Are we on par with them? Are we doing better than them? Is there something that we may want to do better in order to continue to attract, that great talent source? So it really allows the mobility professionals to have that conversation with each other in order to look at competition and help with their own programs. So Miki, tell us why you think benchmarking is important.
Yeah. And this is something that we've always done, right? Like you said, Kimberly, I mean, as immigration lawyers, we're always advising clients about, what are other companies doing, especially within the subsection of their industry and the program size. And then, we've always done that. But in the past, 5 or 6 months or so, we've kind of formalized this process and started providing reports to survey participants. And we've grown this community that has been completing our surveys. And so it makes our data even better. And we'll talk about this, right, Kim, in future episodes, dive more deeply into some of the topics that have come out. It's super exciting. And, as a result of those benchmarking surveys, we've held some roundtables virtually and in person, kind of foster the conversations between global mobility professionals, and we've had really good feedback. And so, what stands out to me from this benchmarking exercise and these roundtables is that everybody is facing similar challenges, and these benchmarking and roundtable opportunities have really helped global mobility professionals to exchange ideas and to solve the problems that they all face. And I love it when I can kind of see the spark in people's eyes and the little light bulb goes off and they're learning something about how other people and other programs are doing things that they might not have thought of. And because of the pressure that they are experiencing, like you mentioned, on the day to day, people might be focused on kind of just getting the job done. And it seems like these benchmarking events are really an opportunity to kind of bring the perspective up to a higher level and see the big picture. And so that is a long-winded way of explaining that I've been really enjoying participating in these conversations and seeing that spark light people's eyes up.
Yeah, it's so true. So one of the questions that came up during Global Mobility Journeys was, really interesting. And it was about how should immigration and global mobility functions brand themselves within an organization? And I think that's a really fantastic question because it's really, looking at the big picture of how there's a tie between global mobility and immigration professionals with how they do their day-to-day jobs.
Yeah, and I love that question too. And I think it's pertinent because in some companies, global mobility is really established and has high visibility. And, because of the talent shortage, global mobility programs get a lot of attention. But in some companies, I feel like, global mobility and HR can be kind of an overlooked role, especially for companies that don't have large foreign national populations and large immigration programs. And then on top of that, for smaller and mid-sized programs, it can be a challenge because oftentimes immigration contact has to wear several different hats, within HR or talent acquisition. And so, like you said, I think global mobility professionals are definitely the glue that holds, relocation management companies, immigration, tax, and housing and moving companies together for that foreign national employee, whether they're coming into the US for the first time or relocating within the United States. And global mobility has to implement the policy and coordinate the other stakeholders too, like the managers and recruiters and company executives. And all of those stakeholders have different interests and goals, right? So then global mobility has to set expectations and answer questions. So how you brand yourself, how you brand global mobility within the organization is a really good one. And I think what that would lead to is, global mobility professionals making themselves known and showcasing their value. And the positive result is that then the stakeholders know when to come to them and what their value is ultimately. And so when I think about that, I was thinking about it from kind of different levels within the organizations or different groups. And so, starting with recruiters, global mobility professionals would educate them on immigration processes and, timeline from the offer going out to onboarding. And maybe even before that, pre-hire assessments and setting expectations. And so, part of it is coaching recruiters so that they don't promise something that the company can't deliver, for example, pursuant to policy, right? So when the permanent residency process will be kicked off or what the company will cover in terms of costs or not. So those types of things. And then with hiring managers, it's important to educate them that, you need information in advance as global mobility professionals before the changes to a job takes place to avoid exposing the company and the foreign national to risk. Because as we've talked about in previous episodes, some changes required amended filing, and Global Mobility and Immigration Council needs to know the changes so that appropriate filings can take place or other compliance steps can take place. It even involves something like somebody going from full-time remote to hybrid or full-time on-site to remote in the reverse. The other thing I would say is with respect to foreign nationals, giving them an onboarding packet, a welcome packet, or just to have a quick chat regarding your role as a resource to say, hi, I'm here. I'm your global mobility resource. You need anything related to the visa, I'm here to help you. Any questions that come up, I'll point you in the right direction. So come see me kind of thing. I think that would be helpful.
Yeah, those are all really good points to consider and think about. And one of the things that we just talked about as well with our audience too was about, intercompany transfers, right? So you can get in touch with the transferee early on in the process. So it might be a kickoff call or a virtual meeting with immigration counsel, relocation management company, maybe even the hiring manager, who knows who are the appropriate stakeholders, right? So you want to bring those people in to have an overview of the process and to allow the individual, and in some instances too, right, the other stakeholders, a relocation management company, to ask those questions about, well, what's going to happen with this transfer process? What do we, need to be on the lookout for? What are some potential issues that we might want to factor in? And fingers crossed, we don't have those issues, but what could be some of those hiccups so that when something like that does arise, everybody has already heard about it and has said, oh, Immigration Council mentioned and Global Mobility mentioned this could happen. And so now we have a plan, we have strategy for that. And that makes the global mobility professionals, kind of the stars, right? Like, hey, we let you know what the process is and what could potentially go wrong, what can go right. And that also for global mobility and immigration professionals might mean bringing in employment counsel and general counsel in advance in case there are any compliance issues that could happen, discrimination issues that could happen, like anything that might, not be directly immigration, but is related to immigration and that could have an impact on the intercompany transfer process or even on, the company's compliance requirements with respect to the immigration process or the relocation process. So that's really good to have those stakeholders and those key attorneys involved. A lot of people don't always want to get attorneys involved or like, why do we need to bring them in? But it shows global mobility and immigration professionals importance and what they're providing in terms of service is valuable to the organization because it's assisting with the whole process, right? It's bringing in those key individuals and stakeholders. But it's also good, to have for these professionals to have the relationship with general counsel specifically or corporate counsel in the event that there is a merger and acquisition, right? You want to be looped in as a global mobility professional early on in the process in order to take a look at how is this going to impact that intracompany transferee or how does this impact individuals that are already here and working in the United States in some type of visa classification. And Miki and I was glad when we did our 3-part series on mergers and acquisitions and what it looks like from different non-immigrant visa perspectives in the green card process as well. And if you want to take a look at that, we have that 3-part series on our WR Immigration YouTube page. So that's something to kind of take a look at when you have an opportunity to do so.
I totally agree. And I love that you bring that up because it's mergers and acquisitions type scenario. That's the kind of thing that you need to have already established a connection and a relationship with corporate counsel or general counsel because, when an M&A is going to happen, sometimes HR is not looped in until the very end. And so by getting ahead of it, by establishing those relationships and letting them know, like, hey, if there's an M&A, like, please let me know in advance and I can help you so that we can avoid disasters from an immigration perspective. That's great to do in advance. So I love that. And then just to go back to the foreign national experience that I was talking about earlier in terms of onboarding packets, another thing that we do at WR is, we can hold periodic town halls in partnership with global mobility contacts. A couple of my clients have established a global mobility intranet landing site. So to encourage self-service for resources like FAQs that might be on travel or checklists on what to do if you're going to renew your visa, things like that. It seems to work really well, particularly for larger programs. It does take some investment of time right up front and to also keep it running and to maintain it, keep it up to date. So, depends on the size of your program again, and also how much internal support you have on your team within global mobility to get that done. Another thing that I was thinking about is to position the global mobility program well by providing your program data to company leadership in the form of reports or more sophisticated dashboards. And we do that all the time. For example, what was the immigration spend for the business unit? How did that break down into government filing fees and legal fees and other expenses? How many foreign nationals were sponsored by each business unit? If that's something that might be helpful to leadership. And, it might be helpful to break it down by visa type or by role, things like that. So, that can really bring a lot of credibility to the role into the program. And so by investing some time into showcasing the scope of global mobility work and how you can help each stakeholder, they're likely to remember to reach out to you before a situation becomes an unaddressed problem down the line.
Yeah, those are really good points, Miki. And, as you were talking, I'm thinking global mobility and the immigration professionals are kind of like the center of the wheel, and they have the spokes that go out to all the different stakeholders. And so they're, as you mentioned, the glue that keeps everything together, but it truly is that kind of, just complementary of the business operations. Super, super important. And I think that's a wrap for our Rapid Fire Wednesday today. So tune in next week when we have discussion based on results from our immigration benchmarking surveys. We're happy to share that with everyone. And it actually, teaches us some information as well. And we learn a lot from our benchmarking surveys, which, it's a selfish and selfless way to gather information and distribute information. So after being tongue-tied now, I'm just going to say that's a wrap, and we will see you next time. If you don't already follow WR Integration on LinkedIn, please do so. And you can also follow Miki and me on our individual pages. And every week we do transcribe our Rapid Fire Wednesday into a newsletter to which you can subscribe. So we hope to see you again and have a great day.
Thanks, Kim.